You know, it's funny when you stop and think about it, questions are just everywhere.
Absolutely. Like breathing almost.
Yeah. Like, what should I wear? Phone. Why is it Monday again? We just ask them constantly.
It's how we figure things out, how we connect.
Exactly. And today on the deep dive, we're zooming in on a really core part of English questions, the questions.
We've gathered a bunch of articles and guides sort of looking at what they are, how they work, and some common little slip-ups.
Right. The idea is to really get under the hood of these, give you a solid grasp.
Because they are fundamental. We're talking who for people.
What for, well, pretty much everything else. Stuff, actions, thoughts.
When for time, where for places.
Why for the reason, which for choices.
Can't forget who's for possession.
And the slightly formal, sometimes confusing whom.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And then there's the honorary member, how. Doesn't start with who, but it's definitely part of the family.
It really is. So our mission today, basically to help you feel totally confident using and understanding these questions, whether English is new for you or you just want a quick grammar brush up.
Exactly. We want to make them feel, intuitive.
Okay, so let's dive in. Beyond just starting with WH, what is the deal with these questions? What makes them different?
Well, the main thing is they're not looking for a simple yes or no.
Ah, right. They're open questions.
Precisely. If I ask, are you hungry? You can say yes or no. But if I ask, what do you want to eat? I need more information, specifics.
So the word is kind of a signal saying, give me details.
Exactly. It's asking for content, a person, a place, a reason, a time, not just a yes-no confirmation.
Which really makes them the engine of conversation, doesn't it? You can't have much of a chat with just yes-no answers.
Not really. You need these what questions to actually explore ideas, share information, understand each other properly. They're crucial.
Okay, let's break them down then, starting with who. Pretty basic, right? Asking about people.
That's the core function, yes. Who's that? Who won the game? Identifying a person or people.
Simple enough.
Well, mostly.
Yeah.
There's that little wrinkle with subject versus object. Who is typically the subject, the one doing the action? Like, who called?
Okay, which brings us naturally to whom, the object form.
Right. Technically, you use whom when the person is the object of the verb or comes after a preposition. Think, whom did you invite? Or to whom it may concern.
But people don't always talk like that, do they?
No, definitely not. In everyday spoken English, who gets used a lot, even where whom would be grammatically correct.
Right.
Language changes,
Oh.
But it's still good to know the difference, especially for more formal writing. Quick tip. If you can answer the question with he or she, use who. If the answer is him or her, then whom is technically the one.
That's actually a super helpful rule of thumb. Okay, let's move to what? This one seems like the workhorse.
Oh, it absolutely is. Super versatile. It asks about anything that isn't a person, objects, actions, ideas, concepts. What is that noise? What are you reading? What's the capital of France? Also, asking the time. What time is it? And it even pops up with choices, though that's where it sometimes bumps up against which.
Okay, we'll get back to the which comparison. So what is the general purpose asker? What about when? More specific.
Yeah, when is clearly about time. Dates, moments, occasions. When is the meeting? When did you arrive?
Straightforward. Can you use it interchangeably with what time?
Often, yes, for clock time. When does it start or what time does it start? Pretty much the same meaning in that context.
Gotcha. And where? Equally focused, I assume.
Yep. All about location, place, position. Where do you live? Where are my glasses?
Good.
Pinpointing the where or something.
Makes sense. Okay, next up. Why? The investigator.
Yeah, the investigator. It digs for the reason, the cause, the explanation. Why are you late? Why does that happen? It wants the because.
Essential for understanding anything, really.
Totally.
Now, back to which. You mentioned it overlaps with what, but is different for choices. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So what can be used for choices, but it's often more open-ended.
Right.
Like, what do you want for dinner? The possibilities are huge.
Right.
Which, however, is generally used when you're choosing from a specific limited set of options. Like if I show you two shirts, I'd ask, which shirt do you prefer? The choices are right there.
Ah, okay. So which implies a smaller defined group to pick from.
Exactly. You often see it used with of, too, like which of these colors do you like best? That really emphasizes the selection from a group, compared to the more general what color do you like?
That distinction is really useful. It's subtle, but important. Okay, let's talk how. The odd one out, letter-wise.
The honorary way. word. Yeah, no WH, but it functions just like the others, asks for detailed information, not just yes, no.
And it does a lot of different jobs, right?
Oh, incredibly versatile.
Yeah.
It asks about the way something is done, the manner or process. How do you make this? It asks about condition. How are you? It asks about degree or extent. How tall is it? How much does it cost?
And quantity, like how
Which-
many,
right.
or frequency, how often?
Exactly. It covers so much ground. Manner, process, condition, extent, quantity, frequency. It's a powerhouse.
It really is. Okay, nearly there. Whose? That one's clear, right? Possession.
Yep, nice and specific. Whose asks about ownership. Whose jacket is this? Whose turn is it? Simple as that.
Great. So we've met the whole family. Now, how do we actually put them into sentences? Is there a typical formula?
There is a pretty standard structure. Yeah, most often it's where plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb.
Auxiliary verb, like be, do, have, can't, will.
Exactly those. So where are you subjugating main?
Okay, that makes sense. Where word, helper verb, subject, action verb.
That's the main pattern. There's a slight variation if the main verb is be or if there's another main verb. Then it's often just where word plus be plus subject, like who is she? Or how are things?
Right.
And of course, you have to use the right auxiliary verb for the tense you mean. You use did for the simple past. Where did you go? Are, or is for present continuous. What are you reading? Will for future. When will it finish? And so on.
Got it. The helper verb changes with the time frame. Now, thinking about someone learning English, or even just wanting to be more precise, is there a sort of recommended path for getting these down?
Well, the sources we looked at often suggest starting with the really common ones, usually what and where first.
Because they're so basic for just navigating the world.
Probably, yeah. Then maybe who followed by when, how and why often come a bit later. Maybe because the answers can sometimes be more complex or abstract, especially for why.
That progression feels logical. Start concrete, move towards more abstract. What about practical ways to learn them? Any tips from the sources?
Definitely. It's a mix of things. First, just clearly introduce the words and what they mean, with tons of simple examples.
Like we've been doing.
Exactly. Then, explicitly teach that sentence structure. Wa plus auxiliary plus subject plus verb. Give people practice filling in the blanks, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Modeling is huge, just hearing and seeing the questions used correctly. Then guided practice, getting learners to actually ask and answer, maybe with some help at first.
Building confidence.
Right, and importantly, looking at common mistakes and explaining why they're mistakes. Plus, making it fun games, role-playing, whatever works, and finally encouraging people to just use them independently.
Makes sense. You mentioned common mistakes. What are some typical trip-ups for learners?
Word order is a big one. Saying something like where you were going instead of where you going.
Forgetting to flip the subject and auxiliary verb.
Exactly. Or using the wrong auxiliary. Or leaving it out entirely what you want instead of what you want. Sometimes confusing similar words like mixing up when and where. And sometimes just relying too heavily on what when a more specific word like who or which would be better. Asking what is that man instead of who is that man.
Right, overusing the default. These often come from trying to translate directly from their first language, I bet.
Often, yes, or just not having fully internalized the English structure yet.
Okay. So, beyond the basics, are there any more sort of advanced or surprising things about these words?
Yeah, a few interesting points came up. One is that these we words aren't all the same type of word grammatically.
How so?
Well, what and who often act like pronouns, they stand in for a noun, but whose and which can act like determiners, kind of like adjectives modifying a noun, whose phone, which door,
Okay.
and then when, where, why, and how usually function as adverbs.
Mhm.
They tell you more about the verb, like the time, place, reason, or manner of the action.
So they have different grammatical jobs. That's actually quite neat. I hadn't thought about it quite like that.
That adds another layer, right?
Yeah.
And then there are those wherever words, whoever, whenever, whatever, etc. They usually introduce clauses.
Like whoever finishes first wins.
Exactly. And why words can also start noun clauses, acting as the subject or object within that clause.
Yeah.
Plus, it's worth remembering that how fits all these patterns, even without the WH. And really nailing that what versus which, difference for open versus limited choices, that's key for sounding precise.
Wow. Okay, so they're simple on the surface, but there's definitely some depth there.
For sure.
All right, let's try to wrap this up. What are the absolute must-remember points about why questions?
Okay, key takeaways. 1, they're essential for getting information way beyond yes, no. 2, each word, who, what, where, etc., has a specific job. 3, that basic structure, why plus auxiliary plus subject plus verb, is your friend.
Mm.
And 4, while they seem basic, mastering them means understanding things like tense changes with auxiliaries, the who-whom thing, and that what versus which nuance.
So for everyone listening, maybe a final thought. Start paying attention to the specific why word people use when they ask you something. How does that word shape the answer they get?
Yeah, it's interesting. Could asking a slightly different why question get you a totally different, maybe more useful answer, something to think about?
Definitely. And if you do want more practice, like we mentioned.
Right. Lots of resources out there, worksheets, online games, apps specifically designed to help you practice forming and answering these questions. They can be really helpful.
Good tip. Well, this has been a great exploration of a fundamental piece of English.
It has. Always good to revisit the basics sometime.
Absolutely. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into language